Hey everybody, Hunter back again from Showtime Studios. Just going to do a showcase video on the VW Beetle. I did a quick one several months back, but I've had a lot of questions come up on this car about various things. You know, what all I used from the kit, what was scratch built, what was actually, aftermarket and things like that. So we're going to run through it and kind of give you a little bit of a breakdown of everything that I've done to this car over about a 4-year span. So I guess to start out with, this started as the 1/16th scale Revell of Germany, 1952 split rear window Beetle. And it's an interesting subject. The kit is pretty decent for the most part. It does come with the opening doors, the opening hood, the trunk. All that stuff is opened up in the kit. As you can see, I did not use the hood on this particular model. The doors are posed in the open position, and the trunk now, which was the engine cover, is using the kit hinges, and it's modified just a little bit. But as far as using kit items on this particular model, I used the body, most of the exterior detail parts like the headlights, the door handles. Let's see, what else did we use on the exterior? The tail lights, the running boards, these chrome pieces that are right back in here. And other than that, that's about it that we actually used out of the kit itself. Most of this, like I say, is it's just using the Revell body, and everything else is either, aftermarket, 3D printed, scratch built, whatever. Moving on to like the chassis, where it all started. The frame and everything on this model is all scratch built. It's 2x3 box tubing. Um, all the cross members, all of the 4-link brackets, the 4-link, the rear end, all of that stuff is scratch built. The A-arms, the struts, none of that is aftermarket. I did have a set of wheels cut years ago for another project, and this gentleman is no longer in business. As far as him, this is Micro Nitro wheels on this, and I went ahead and added them to this build. And I did drill them and put aftermarket valve stems in them from RB Motion. It also has RB Motion lugs on it that you can, if you look real close, you can see them back in there. Let's see. From the chassis, we got it sitting on the wheels and tires for the most part. And then, we started other things. The roll cage that's in this car, it's only a 8-point bar. I didn't go crazy with the roll cage in it. That's all scratch built out of Plastruct tubing. Just to bounce to the interior here a little bit, the door panels were not used from the kit. I did the actually like a carpeted door panel in this. That's all flocking. I did use the kit dash and a couple of the interior kit panels, like the rear panels and the headliner is kit. We used I think I said the door handles and the window cranks are kit. If you look in there on the dash, you can see the 5-inch monster tack with the shift light, and right over to the right side of that is a yellow spot. If it'll show up, it's right underneath of my finger there. You'll see it. That's actually the little flower that you see on the dash of a lot of Beetles. And I thought that was pretty cool, putting it into a Pro Street car. Let's see. As far as kit on the inside, that's about it on that stuff. Scratch built includes, like I say, the 5-inch shift monster tack with the shift light, the steering column, the pedals. The steering wheel is from Future Attraction, and I scratch built the harnesses. All of the buckles and everything for the harnesses are all done here in the shop. None of that was aftermarket, and that's actually just craft ribbon that I used for the actual belt material. And it is the clamshell type the quick release on the driver's side, and then on the passenger side, it's just a regular lap belt. Scratch built the shifter with the cable. Everything in the back of the car, as far as the tubs and the rear panels and all that stuff, is scratch built. Let's see, moving on, the exhaust is all scratch built. It's basically plastic tubing, solid plastic tubing, back to the exhaust tips. The headers were all scratch built, which are very hard to see in this car, but they, I have, I think, a video of them, and I know I have a bunch of pictures of them on Facebook when they were going together. They're done out of solder and, various little tricks I've learned, through the years. Let's see, moving on, the glass in this particular model is all scratch built. None of this is the kit glass. It was way too thick. It was out of scale. I didn't like it, so it's all done out of 10 thousandths tinted plastic from Plastruck. I did use the rear license plate frame and the tag light and the handle. That's kit. Now we move on around to inside the trunk. Every panel inside the trunk is scratch built. You can see the tubs in there. All these carpeted panels that are down in this area in here are all scratch built. The fuel pumps are scratch built. The regulator, or actually the fuel filter, the nitrous bottle is 3D printed. It has some 1/24th scale, I think, hose clamps on it that I used. They had a real long version of a hose clamp, so I used that as the bracket, which came out pretty good. The rear firewall that's in there is done with Spastic's chrome, and it simulates a polished aluminum firewall. We have the parachute release cable that you can see there. The parachute came from Ted's Modeling in Florida. And the lanyard cable, the mount, and all that stuff for the parachute is scratch built. None of that's aftermarket, and I'm not getting a real good view of it here, but let's see. Next, what we have the wheelie bars there, and let me slide this around a little bit, see if we can get a better view of the wheelie bars. The wheelie bars are all scratch built except for the black brackets that you see right here and the wheelie bar wheels. The wheelie bar wheels came in from Ted's Modeling. The axle in the center of the wheelie bars and all the bolts and everything's all, well, actually the bolts are, I'm wrong. The bolts are RB Motion, and everything else was scratch built on that. The remove before flight parachute tag. It actually has a pin. The parachute does have a pin in it. If you look very closely there, you'll see the pin going through the parachute. That's all scratch built. That was done with a little piece of wire. And the tag we printed out on the printer. Right over here, you can see the charging lugs that were scratch built for charging the battery. The battery is in this location right here. You can see the positive and negative cables. It actually has a cover over top of it in the car. Let's see, we said the tail lights are kit. It does have a Ford 9-inch rear end in it with coilovers that were scratch built. They're not aftermarket coilovers. Moving in on this side, the transmission tunnel and all that stuff was scratch built. The firewall, the inner and outer firewall was scratch built. The seats in this particular car were donated by a good buddy of mine and fellow modeler, Rocky Sink. They are actually out of a 1/16 scale Camaro kit. And I had to actually shorten them, narrow them from side to side. And I went ahead and cut the tops off and scratch built the headrest for it with the inlaid VW emblems, which were photo etch. So that was great for Rocky to send those in to me so I can modify them. And then I poured a final mold of them and cast those. And let's see, that pretty much wraps up that part of it. As far as the paint on this particular model, this is House of Color. A little bit of a combination, House of Color and Spastic's. It is candy apple red over a silver base. I think this was silver on this car. I'm pretty sure it was silver base. And it is covered with, believe it or not, one-shot lacquer clear and a whole lot of wet sanding and buffing to get it to come out. And it came out pretty good. I'm not 100% happy with it, but it looks pretty decent. Let's see, what else did we, that's pretty much it around the most of the car. Now we'll move around to what I call the business end here, and that's where a lot of the questions have came up. How much aftermarket is on the engine? Well, to start out with, the base of the engine is a 454 big block Chevrolet, 3D printed. The block, the heads, the oil pan is all originally 3D printed. Some of it is modified, and the valve covers are 3D printed that are also modified. The blower and the intake are 3D printed, and they were a mountain of work to clean up and get right. A lot of texture in these things. It took multiple sanding and primer coats to make everything come out, but that's done in Spastics chrome to simulate polished aluminum. The carburetors are 3D printed, and as you can see, they have the hard lines on them instead of the flexible A&N lines like you see on most models. All of the nitrous system is scratch built except for the A&N fittings and the braided hose. The solenoids are scratch built. The injection lines for it, the fuel block, all that stuff for the nitrous is scratch built. The MSD box is a resin MSD box that's right there, and it's blue. It's the BTM style box. It is wired. I got a little bit of detail on the firewall there. And as I was talking about, there's an inner and outer firewall. I built a cover for the outer firewall to shape to the motor and just clean everything up in there. The radiator itself is totally scratch built, using various pieces of plastic and screening and things like that. The electric fan on this is scratch built using same thing, plastic and bits and pieces of photo etch and stuff like that. The front drive distributor in this, you can see the MSD with the wires coming out, the crab cap, that's all scratch built. The water pump, the electric water pump is scratch built. The coil is scratch built. I also stretched sprue and did the valve cover hold downs. I'm not sure if they're going to show up in the video, but they are there. Actually, if you look at the right side of the engine there, you can see them. They're the T-handled valve cover bolts. Those were all scratch built. It does have RB motion oil breathers on the valve covers. All the plumbing and everything, all the hard lines were all, scratch built by me. Let's see, what else do we have? The throttle linkage was scratch built on this car. The return springs on both carburetors. The blower belt was scratch built. It actually, if you zoom in real close to this or see it at a show, the blower belt actually is an 8mm drive, and it does have the ribs on it. It was scratch built and then put into a mold and resin cast and then sanded down very, very thin so I could make it flexible. The pulleys, two of the pulleys are scratch built. One is 3D printed. And then, like I say, the headers were scratch built on it. It does have the RB motion spark plugs in it with the wires that go down with the spark plug boots. The water neck and the purge, tank and all that stuff was scratch built on this. I think I used a cap off of 1/24 scale model for that part. And then we use Detail Master, fittings and Protec hose. That was aftermarket, of course. The front motor plate in this is scratch built along with all the mounts, and the inner fender well panels are scratch built and covered with carbon fiber from Scale Motorsports. And I think overall that about wraps up, explaining the little 1/16 scale VW Beetle. But there was a lot of questions that come up. So like I say, I wanted to do a quick showcase video on that and kind of give everybody ins and outs of it. One other thing I did forget on this is the air breathers on this are aftermarket. They actually come from Chevy Cheeseburger from what was Chevy Cheeseburger shop? I can't remember it now. It was Extreme. That's where it came from. And those are parts by Parks. And they're actually the big air filters for a 1/24 scale model. and they worked very well to simulate the 8 or 9 inch that I wanted to use on this particular build, since it is 16th scale. So that's about it. That's about all that we have as far as the VW Beetle. If you have any more questions or whatever on the model or something I used on it, leave me a message, let me know, and I'll be more than glad to give you an answer on that. So that's all we've got for this one. We've got a couple more videos coming up today on the chassis jig, how to build one. So stay tuned for those. And like always, I thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.